Okay, so let's look at what is happening here. So we already know what this is, the document, the HTML, the header tag. This is the title of the page in the browser tab. We have the description, and then here we have a script tag. And this script tag connects us to the A-frame library that allows us to build in 3D on the web. So you always need to have this script tag in your header tag in order to build. If I take this out and then refresh, it goes away because it needs this in order to build the scene. And this is already provided for us in their boilerplate. So then we have the body tag. And in your last assignment, you were building a website, everything went inside of the body tag. So again, that is true. But now, on top of that, we are working with in a scene. And all of the tags that have a dash and then something are specifically the A-frame tags. So they have created an HTML library for us to use with their tags, and it works in a specific way. So all of the other HTML tags that we were looking at last week, we're not going to use because we are going to use their tags. But they work the same way. So everything in our 3D scene has to be inside of the scene. So I'm going to space these out together because these three aren't going to move. And then everything is within my scene tag. So I have this scene beginning tag and the scene closing tag. And now my entire 3D VR experience is built within the scene tag. So let's look at some of the things that are already in our boilerplate. We have, I'll just move this up a bit. We have a box tag, and we have a blue box here. We have a sphere tag, and we have a pink sphere here. We have a cylinder tag and a cylinder, and then a plane, which is this green plane on the bottom here. The way that we work with A-frame, because it is 3D space, which is different than the HTML that we were working with last week, we have always 3 coordinates for space. So the box position here is -1, 0.5, and -3. And it's always in the order of X, Y, and Z. So the X-axis goes left to right, and the Y-axis goes up and down. Just like in math, when you graph things, you put the Y-axis up and down, and the X-axis is left to right. And then the Z-axis is the depth, which goes back into 3D space or forward into 3D space. So if we move this box to 0, it's now in the center. And you can think of it just like a number line. 0 is in the middle, -2, or here we'll do -1 is to the left, and 1 is to the right. So the X, anytime you do a negative number, is going to go left of 0. So I can do -2.5, and it's going to go over to the left. Or I could do 2, and it's going to go over to the right. So left and right, negative is left, positive is right, and 0 is in the middle. And put this back to -2. Oops. And now the Y is up and down. So if I do up, positive, 1 is going to go up, 0 is in the middle, and negative is below 0. So I have to drag for you to see, and I'll go out with the S key. So now it's below the 0. Then we can see the plane position, the Y is at 0. So anything minus 0 is going to go below the plane. Each object needs a position, and they are called primitives. So I'm going to put this back up to 1. And the Z position is the depth, which is what we're not used to really working with. And depth is the important part of 3D. So if I do -2, the box will come closer. Here, I'll make this -1. The box comes closer. If I do -6, it'll go far. So now it's behind the sphere. If I do 1, it's going to disappear because by default, where I am standing is the camera is at 0, 0. So if I zoom out with the S key and go backwards, I'll eventually get to the cube. So this controller, where I'm moving left around, this is the camera object. It's by default at 0, 0 position in space. I could put it here to find the box. I can also turn this around to see behind me, there is my cube. So you can think of this A-frame scene that is in 3D as a giant sphere that's surrounding you, and you are inside it with the camera directly at the center at the 0, 0 point. So anywhere that I put this box, if I put it now, I'll just put it back to -1. When the page refreshes, it puts the camera back at that 0, 0 position. So I can do this with all of these things. I can put the sphere up higher, and I can move the cylinder over. I'll put it back to 0. All of these things are movable. I'm going to put that box a little farther away. Okay, so now I have all of my objects there. We also have rotation, and again, the rotation goes around the X, Y, and Z, and this is rotating around the X. So if I do a 45 turn around the X, it's turning, if I drew a line horizontally, it's turning around that line. And if I turn it around the Y, it's going to turn around the Y and around the Z. It can be difficult to visualize which way things are going to rotate based on this 3D system, but sometimes you just put in the numbers and see if it rotates the way you want it to, and we can go into more how to be specific about our rotation. Then here we have the color. So the color is this blue color, and this is a hexadecimal. So it's a good idea to do, I often go to the Adobe color wheel. Let's see. This gives us a way to pick a hexadecimal color so we can get a really large range of colors. And then you can go here and copy that hexadecimal. It's 6 different values, numbers and letters that represent this color. And then I can go here and change that, and that always has that hashtag And now I've changed the color. I can also use, there's a HTML, hexadecimal, color codes, and drag it through here to get my color code. So that is how the color is determined. There's also a few HTML colors that are just already a part of HTML, which we learned last time. So I could change this by just writing red. That's one of the colors that's already programmed in there. Or blue. But if you want to have a more nuanced color where you can really pick different values, then you would go here, copy it, and put it in with the hashtag. And we can see we have it up here in our background color as well. So we can change the whole background of the scene. Let's change that to, I'll do pale. Here's, I can change the value so that it's lighter. I'll change it to this. And now it's a yellow. Each of these is called a primitive, which A-Frame has wrapped for us. And we just use the tags out of the box with different things. So different primitives have certain elements to them that are unique to what they are. So this is a sphere. So we have a radius, and we can change that radius, and that will change the size. So if I make it 2, it'll, oops, that's, I just made it 0.25, so that made it smaller. If I make it 2.25, it'll make it bigger. And you can see the thing with 3D is that when we have this sort of perspective and it's kind of in this floaty space, something like changing the size also changes the appearance of how far or close it is. So it might appear that what we did was make the sphere farther away rather than smaller, or nearer. So it can be a little tricky sometimes with understanding how to make something look closer or farther or bigger or smaller. But that won't be a problem as we fill out our scene. I can also change the box similar to HTML, where I write in height equals 2. So I'm going to rotate this back to 0, 45, and 0, so it's standing upright. So by default, the dimensions of the cube are 1 and 1. And by default, the radius of the sphere will be 1, and by default, the radius and height of the cylinder will be 1. So everything will be 1 by default if you don't change it. So I could change the width and make that 3, and now it'll be wide. But I'm going to keep it as 1, so I'll just erase that because I want to make this rectangle. And I will put the cylinder over, so here's the position X, it's at 0, I'm going to put it over to 1 so it moves to the right. And then the plane, so if I want this to be a ground that looks like it's covering the whole ground, I can change the scale and say I want it to be 10 times the size in the X, Y, and Z dimensions. So I'm scaling, oh wait, it's only 2 dimensions. So I'm scaling it 10 times the width and 10 times the length so that it appears like a ground plane that spans the whole 3D world, and then we have a horizon. I'm actually going to scale it 20. So now it appears more like a horizon, and we have this ground rather than this floaty square below these objects. So I can make this yellow the sky and the plane the ground. And I can do that with scale on all of these. So I could scale the box and make it 2 and 2. So now I've scaled it up. Or I can change the height and width to scale it. So there's a couple of different ways to scale and change the size of things. The radius, the height and width, or the scale. And those are really some of the fundamental ways that we work with changing the shapes, their sizes, their colors, and where they are positioned in 3D space. It's really important to kind of just get very used to doing that because you'll be doing that a lot. Okay, so the next thing is if we go to, I'm going to close this. If we go back to the A-frame documentation, so again, if you go to aframe.io and then you click Get Started, it'll bring us to this introduction page. But alongside here, we have all of these different great resources that it gives us. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, similar to W3 Schools, where we have all of our HTML tags listed, it gives us all of the primitives that they have already coded as HTML tags for us. So if we click on one of them, I will do a torus knot. It gives us an example of the torus knot, how it's written, so we can command copy and bring this into our scene and paste that. And it shows up in our scene, but again, by default, it's going to go to 0, 0. So it is in the middle of where my camera is. So if I zoom out, you can see it's there and it's all surrounding where I was. And if I bring it up higher, all right, so currently it has no position. So the default position is going to be 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to put in the position and say 0, so it's in the middle, and then I'll put it up high 3, and then on the z-axis, I'm going to go -4. Let's see if we can see that. There it is. I will actually do -7. Okay. So now I've positioned the torus knot, and I see it there, and it's being cut off by the plane. I want you to see the whole thing, so I'm going to put it up higher. Also 7. Maybe I'll do 8. Okay, so now it's floating up there. If I move through the scene and I go over here, you can see it behind the sphere here, and there's the torus knot in full. And we see all of these things that come with the torus knot. So there's arc, there's P, there's Q, radius, radius, tubular. So if we change this, let's see what it does. I'll put it to 4. Okay, I'll put it to 2. Ooh, so that made it really fat. So that's how wide the tube is. So I think it was 0.5 or 0.2. So now the tube is not as fat. And I can see the spirals again. And let's see, what is P? I don't know. I'm going to put a different number in there. Okay, so that looks like it's how many times it's kind of twisted around. So it's twisted around more times. So if I do 2, it should be less. Oh, that's what it was. It was at 2. So if I do 0.5, oh. Let's see. So it's how far spaced out these coils are. So a lot of times I will kind of just do that, just play around with some of those numbers to see what it does. But you can also go to the documentation here and it will give you more information about some of those things. So here we have P, geometry P, the default values to Q, the radius. Okay, well, it doesn't give us a lot of information about what those things actually are, but it should. I guess you have to know the math of the torus knot. But let's look at another one. Let's look at a cone. Wait, that was a circle. Here's the cone. Yeah. Okay. So here's the basic cone. I'm going to take the basic cone tag. I'm just going to Command C and copy. And I'll bring it here. And I'll add the position. So position equals, let's do 1 and 1 and -3 so that it's near, I want to put it near my cylinder. Where did my cylinder go? It's underneath. And I'll change the radius bottom to 1, make it a little smaller so I can see my cylinder under there. And I'll make my radius top a little smaller. And I will bring the height up to 3. No, let's do 1.5. There. So now I put a cone on top of the cylinder, and I did that. Here, I'm going to put these near each other. The cone and the cylinder. So that it appears that the cone is on top of the cylinder, like this little mushroom shape. So we can use primitives to build objects like blocks and make them appear to be together. I can also put them together if I put the cylinder tag around the cone. No. Oh, right, I have to do an A entity. And then I can put these all inside of one. So I put the cylinder and the cone inside of an entity. And now I can say position equals, let's say, 4 and 4 and -1, -3. Now it moves that entire object as 1. So I made my little mushroom, and let's make this 2, minus 2. All right, let's bring it down again. 1. Okay, so I can move that as one object by putting it, both of those within the entity tag. Okay, so the next thing is there is a primitive called sky. And this is also where we'll get into the asset management system. So here is the sky tag. Which we will add in here. And you see it says source as sky. We don't have a source yet because we have to add an image. So if I go to Google and I put in equirectangular, let's see, sky image. I go to images, we will get a skybox, which is a certain kind of format of an image. Let's see, that one is all right. Let's see if this works. I'm going to save this image as a sky. And now if I go back to Glitch and I click on assets, I have no assets yet. Where's my sky image is here. I can drag this into my assets folder. And this is similar to the idea of the images folder that we were using in our HTML exercise last week, except this is hosted by Glitch, and it's not exactly in a folder, which we will talk about later, but it's hosting the image, and we can just copy the link to that image that it's hosting. And then we can use this as an asset. But first we have to tell A-Frame that we're using an asset management system. So we put in an A asset tag. And we then do image ID equals sky, and the source equals that URL that I copied from the assets folder. And now oops, it needs to be plural, so I put asset, but it needs to be assets. And let's take off the background color of the scene. And we should have a sky in there, but it is not in there. So it might be that I did not get a 360 image. So we need to have a 360 image. Should work without it. Let's see. What did I do wrong? Source equals sky. Assets, assets. Image ID is sky. A sky source. Sky quotes and sky. Let's see. I have image ID is, oh, that's why. No hashtag there. There we go. There's the sky now. It is not a 360 image because we can see this line here. But for the purposes of this so far, it has put in our sky and it's mapped it all the way around. You can see, so you can see this here, you can see it's all around, it's turned it into a wrapped photo around there to make my sky. And normally what we want is an equirectangular sky, which I searched, but this image is not equirectangular, it's falsely labeled because it will, here, let's try this one. Save this image as, we'll do sky 2. That looks like equirectangular to me. So I'm going to go back to my assets and I will bring that file in. I can just upload it. Sky 2. And now I take that and I copy it. And I put that in my assets tag. So everything that I use as images goes into my assets tag. Oops. Image goes inside of the assets tag. The ID will be sky 2. And the source is that. No, I didn't copy it. I copied the same one. Nope, it is. Okay, yeah, that's it. Sky 2, and then I'll put sky 2 here. Okay, so now we have an equirectangular image, and that maps onto the sky as a sphere. And you can see the difference. In the last one, we had a seam, and it came up to a point, but this one gets rid of that, and it maps it so that there's no seams, and there are no wrapped points that you can see. So now it just appears to be a part of our horizon and our sky. And that's the equirectangular image. So the equirectangular images have these sort of like weird warp shape. And that is because what they are doing is actually mapping onto a sphere. Like if you took this rectangle and you wrapped it around a sphere, like a ball, we're standing inside of the ball, and that's what it's going to look like when you wrap it around. So if you want to add an image to the sky, it's best to find something formatted in that equirectangular format. Okay, so that is how we use the assets system.